Good afternoon. So for the do now, I'd like you to take these fragments and put them in order to form two sentences. So these fragments, put them together in order to form two sentences. So something that's true about a scientific law and a scientific theory. You know you're going to start with a scientific law. So what is it that the scientific law does? Okay, so do that and submit that for your do now for me. So as a review, when you're talking about theory versus law, a scientific law describes what happens. It just tells you this is what's going to happen. And this is what we see all the time. It happens this way all the time. So a law just describes and it tells you. A scientific theory explains. It doesn't just say this is what's going to happen. A scientific theory says why this is going to happen in the natural world. Okay? So an example of a law is the law of Newton's law of motion. What goes up must come down. Everything that you throw up in the air, it comes down eventually. Nothing that you throw up stays up there. It comes down eventually. So that's an example of a law. An example of a theory is the theory of relativity. For example, E equals mc squared. Some kind of explanation. So in the theory of relativity, it explains how E, energy, is related to m, mass, and c squared, which is the speed of light. Something you guys don't have to worry about. You won't have to worry about this equation until you take physics in college. So this is your little review for theory versus law. There's usually one question on the Regents about this, so just remember, law describes, theory explains. So in an experiment is valid when you can trust the results of the experiment. And there are three factors that you should consider when talking about how valid an experiment is. So when you consider accuracy, this is an experiment, in an experiment that is accurate, the data is measured properly and consistently. If you're measuring temperature, you're not going to put your hand to somebody's forehead and guess that their temperature is 100.83 degrees Celsius or Fahrenheit. That's not accurate. The best way to take somebody's temperature is to use a thermometer. If you want to measure something's length or width or height, you will use some kind of ruler, a yardstick, a measuring tape, right? So you will also be consistent. If you're measuring across your experimental and control group, you will use the same ruler for each group or the same yardstick for each group, right? If you buy a ruler from the 99-cent store, is it going to be as good as the ruler from Staples? So things to consider with accuracy. So trials is the easiest one to understand. That just means you did the experiment more than one time. When you do the experiment one time, it's possible that your result is from a mistake. It's possible. Not always true, but it's possible. But if you repeated that experiment 10 times and you got the same result 10 times, it's more likely that result was not from a mistake. And now bias. You don't want bias in your experiment. You want accuracy, you want trials, but you do not want bias. This happens when an experimenter changes the results to get an outcome that they would like to get. This looks like, for example, me, Miss Louie. I'm doing an experiment. I want to test 5 energy drinks. I want to see which of these 5 energy drinks will help me exercise longer. I test it out. I exercise for 5 days, and each day I drink a different energy drink. At the end of my experiment, energy drink number 2 helps me exercise longer without feeling tired. But then, what if I think that energy drink 2 tastes nasty and decide to pick energy drink 3 because it tastes better? This is an example of bias. I disregarded the actual result of my experiment and changed it. So you could change the results, or you could, change the experiment within the experiment. Okay? Whenever an experiment is adjusted to get a certain result, that's bias. You don't want this in your experiment. This makes your experiment invalid. or not valid. So this is a video from Grey's Anatomy, a short scene. We're going to talk about ethics really briefly. What is ethics and what does it mean for science to be ethical? In this example, this man, his wife went through surgery, but before she went through the brain surgery, she signed a legal document called a medical directive that states that if she became brain dead and needed machines to live, that she would like to have those machines disconnected. However, the husband felt differently, so I'm just going to show this video really quickly. Well, I can't show it really quickly. It is how long it is.
For your loss. No, don't speak about my wife as if she's dead. She's still here. She could wake up.
She's not going to wake up, Mr. Clark. Not with the brain damage she suffered.
You don't know that, Mr. Clark.
If we don't obey your wife's directive, if we ignore her wishes...
She signed that for 3 years.
Her health will deteriorate. She'll lose body mass. She'll have no immune system.
She'll require round-the-clock care. That can become very expensive very quickly.
I don't care about that.
It'll be no life for either of you. And that's why your wife signed the advance directive. She didn't want to have to live her life this way, and she didn't want you to live your life this way either.
Don't you speak for my wife. Don't you dare speak for my wife.
I'm sorry, Mr. Clark, but the Ethics Committee has reviewed your case. We are bound by law to obey her wishes.
If you unplug my wife, you'll be killing.
I'm sorry. You should take all the time you need to call your family to say goodbye.
There's no one to call.
See it through.
Mr. Clark.
Please.
I'm sorry.
I keep telling myself there's a chance she'll wake up. Once you turn off the respirator, there is a chance. Even if it's just less than 1% chance that she'll start breathing again. Right? Miracles do happen. That's what she always says. Please, darling, wake up. Please.
I'm so sorry.
Please. Please wake up. Please wake up. Please wake up.
So, what do you think the right thing would be to do in this example? Did you think that the doctors did the right thing? And why do you think so? So the question brought up here is a question of ethics. It's a question of right or wrong morally. So I wanted you guys to consider that question on your own. There's nothing to collect here. When we talk about ethics, ethics are the moral principles that govern a person's behavior or the conducting of an activity. For example, scientific experiments. When we're doing scientific experiments, we need to consider what is right and what is wrong. And to further explain, morals are defined as a person's standard of behavior. How somebody behaves if they believe that something is right or something is wrong. So ethics is it's when you it's the consideration of conducting an activity based on what is right and what is wrong. So ethical issues are usually issues with no obvious right or wrong answer. For example, the death penalty or human-animal experimentation or whether or not we should use stem cells. There's always going to be a side that says yes to each of these, and there's always going to be a side that says no to each of these. There's never a unanimous yes or no. So it has to do with everyone's personal morals, what everyone believes is right or wrong. And these issues are an issue of ethics. So this is an exit ticket, again, that I'd like you guys to consider. This is not something I'm collecting, but you guys do have a Tuskegee experiment reading to do. So please reach out to me if you need any help with that reading. I want you guys at the last question for that to tell me if you think that Tuskegee experiment was ethical. Do you think that what was done in this experiment was morally right or morally wrong, based on your moral compass? But that's all I had for you guys today. Please reach out if you have any questions. And also, if the video had no audio, you can click on the slides, and the video link will be there. It's straight from YouTube, and the audio should work just fine. Have a good day.